G'day, John Adley here from the CEPU.
And Ben Jewell from the CEPU.
As I'm sure you're aware, SA Power Networks like to put out videos to their employees. They contain a lot of graphs and economic indicators that support their point of view and advance their argument when it comes to the enterprise agreement. We can do the same. We're going to show you some graphs and some economic indicators that illustrate why our position on the enterprise agreement is a fair and reasonable one for our members. So firstly, as you would have heard recently from the Treasurer, the economy is recovering and we are in recovery from the COVID-19 recession. Gross national product is predicted to rise, and the same trajectory is predicted by the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, to hold true for CPI. So CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, it is the measure of the rate of inflation, how much things cost, is rising, as is the gross national product of the country, which is an indicator of how much money the country is making. So both of those things are on the rise, which is good news for us, good news for the economy, good news for SA Power Networks. Now, one of the other graphs I want to show you is the share of profit and wages. This is a graphical representation of what proportion of economic output goes to corporations in the form of profits and what proportion goes to citizens in the form of wages. Now, as you can see by the graph, these two indices have been diverging for a long time and the disparity is currently at record levels. This means that profits have never been higher and as a proportion, wages have never been lower. This is important to think about when you're considering your enterprise agreement. The way to turn this around and reduce this widening gap in the share of the money that the economy and you as a worker generates between what's going to corporations like SA Power Networks and what's ending up in your pay packet is to make sure you get a decent enterprise agreement. This is turned around when people demand a fair share, and what we're saying is that our members are demanding a fair share. They're not going to say yes to an agreement which is substandard.
So our members demanding a fair share is a very reasonable thing in an enterprise agreement. The AER has said that our members in SA Power Networks in the distribution sector are the most productively efficient workers, and they have been over the last 10 years. Actually, there's a graph here that shows that, and the graph shows that since 2006, and the graph goes to 2018, we are way and above all the productivity measures from all the other states. So I say that the ask that we've got for our enterprise agreement at the moment is a very, very reasonable one, and we'll continue to perform, outperform all the other states moving forwards. Over the last 4 years, we've done everything that we can possibly do for SA Power Networks to implement systems and to make it as efficient as possible. Unfortunately, SA Power Networks hasn't been measuring productivity. So all we can really go by is the KPIs that they give to the AER to show, the AER reflects in these graphs to show how productively efficient the workers are. The other thing that we need to touch on is the amount of money that the AER has given SA Power Networks for the next 5 years. The bottom line is the AER has given SA Power Networks all the money they asked for in the next 5 years. I think they fell short by $1.8 million of the 3,914 million that they got. So that's a lot of cash. And the projected 500 million loss that SA Power Networks keeps talking about, they haven't quantified to us. And really, they're looking at the last 5 years for that 500 million. If the rules stayed the same and they performed exactly the same work as they did in the last 5-year period, then they would have got the same money as the last 5-year period. Obviously, 5-year periods are different because you can't perform the same work every 5 years, and that's why the ebbs and flows of the money. But the bottom line is SA Power Networks put a price to the AER for work in the next 5-year period, That work was proposed to cost $3.916 billion, and they ended up with 3.914. So they've got what they asked for. So I don't think them coming to us with their hat in their hands saying that they're poor is a good move, and especially when they're going to the ASX and saying that they've been relatively unaffected by COVID and they've got 4% growth over the next 5 years. The bottom line is they want to give you a wage rise that is in accordance with only what the AER has given them, that 0.86% or whatever it was, on top of CPI. But that ignores all the growth that you contribute to every single year. Like, the workers contribute to the growth by being efficient, by performing their work as it is laid out to them every single day. And they do this better than every other state. So you deserve a part of that growth. And I reckon a 1.5% cut of the 4% growth is more than reasonable. You're giving them more than you're taking. So I think the union and I think the members of our union are taking a very reasonable stance at asking for 3.5%. So we ask you to vote again and vote no.
And on that, we will just return to one last graph, and that is the results of the last vote on this enterprise agreement. It's exactly the same offer. It's the same offer that SA Power Networks put to us on day one at the opening of the first negotiation meeting. They haven't changed their offer whatsoever. So the previous vote was an overwhelming rejection of the company's offer. The offer hasn't changed, and the vote shouldn't change either.